Good morning and welcome to our daily word this morning. Today is Friday. We've reached the end of another week, and so I'm glad you could join me yet again for our time together and our daily cruise through Scripture and how it speaks to us, and importantly that we live our lives together through the Scripture and through our ongoing time together. So to me, these are important days and times and minutes that we spend together. So, as always, thanks for carving out time to be with me on a daily basis and for spending these few minutes with me. Today's daily word is number 710. And so we've been on this long journey together. So, this morning's scripture is probably one that we know, but it's an interesting, powerful one, I think, to end our week with, especially if you've had a difficult week like I've had with folks and my own personal issues and things. It's important to hear these words. And so, from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 17, verse 20, I'll read this one verse, but talk a little bit about the context of it. And it says this: He said to the disciples, "Because of your little faith. For truly I tell you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you." Now, the context of this particular scripture is that a man came to Jesus and knelt before him and said that his son had epilepsy, and could Jesus heal him, because he had brought his son to the disciples and they couldn't heal him. And so Jesus says, "How much longer should I put up with you?" And Jesus rebukes the demon, and the disciples say, "Why couldn't we do that? What's missing?" And Jesus says to them, what's missing for them is that their faith, not that it was lacking, but it was too small, even smaller, apparently, than this grain of mustard seed that Jesus then alludes to. And so Jesus says to them, "Look, here's why you couldn't do it: because of your little faith. For truly I tell you, if you have the faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to the mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you." Now, I know you know the size of a mustard seed. You can roll it in your fingers. And Jesus says to them that their faith was apparently, as we read into this, smaller than that. And so they couldn't heal this young boy of his epilepsy. But then Jesus reminds them that you don't have to have this great, powerful, overwhelming faith. This, sometimes I call it, in certain people, happy Jesus moments where they're just, full of whatever all the time. Jesus says to them, "Look, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, that much faith inside of you, then it will grow inside of you. And you can say to the mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move from here to there, and nothing will be impossible for you." So I think about this in terms of our lives and how we live them together, and what it means for us and how we express our faith, but more importantly, how we use our faith, how our faith speaks to us in the midst of life's difficult challenges. So, you all know that in the midst of life this week, I've been dealing with death, and conversations around death. I've said it almost every day this week, and I know, and it's difficult. And, and other folks, just the difficulties of life. And even my own, you go to the doctor and you have all this blood work done, and the doctor says, "It all looks good. Your blood work all looks good, except for, then you have to deal with the except fors. And you kind of leave there, a little defeated. But then we're reminded in all of our lives, that what's required of us, what's given to us. We're born with a measure of faith. That if we have faith the size of a mustard seed, we can say to a mountain, move, and it will move from here to there. Nothing will be impossible. And friends, I think for us, for me, maybe not all of us, but for me, but for probably all of us, we don't think about our faith in those terms. We rely on our own strength, our own self-sufficiency, our own knowledge, and try to figure everything out in that kind of way. When Jesus reminds the disciples, those who'd been with him for 3 years, look, the reason you couldn't is because you didn't really tap in to your faith. And that's what we are called to. And that's the good news that we're given, that we don't have to be filled to the brim with faith. We just have to have enough the size of a mustard seed that can help us move forward in our lives. And so for us, as we live our lives today, trying to write some final words for my sermon for the funeral tomorrow. I'm going to sing, and it's a song I've never sang before, at least in public, at least by myself. And so that's going to be an interesting challenge. People have heard me practice and say it sounds really good, but I'm I'm a little critical of myself. But then the scripture, it's a reminder, that a mustard seed of stuff powerful enough to move the mountain is given to us, and we have it deep inside of us. And so, one of the things that's an interesting challenge, having it for ourselves. And then, I've gotten so much affirmation this week from people thanking me for being their pastor, thanking me for the work that I do, thanking me for being so good, and whatever the words were. And I struggle with all of that. But I was in a conversation yesterday. Now, people who know me, and we kind of joke about it in church, and we kind of don't joke about it. It's kind of serious. That when I die, they know they're going to have fried chicken at my funeral dinner. They know it. Gina knows it. Folks who help at funeral dinners know it. It's all written down. The kids know it. Diane knows it. We've joked about that, kind of and kind of not, because it's serious. But we have another person who's reaching the end of her life, and I had a conversation yesterday, and they said, well, she's going to beat you to the fried chicken, because apparently at her funeral dinner, we're going to have fried chicken. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know we were doing that. And the conversation went something like this. Yep, she wanted to have fried chicken because she knows that Pastor Jim loves fried chicken. Gosh, I was so taken aback by that. In a good way, in a loving way. To me, that was a reminder that the faith that she and I've shared in the 11 years of being her pastor has been remarkable. And we have enough faith to move a mountain. And so, friends, I hope that you and I in our lives together would just, share our faith in that powerful, significant kind of way, so that we could then, move a mountain together if we need to. So thanks for joining me for this week. Thanks for always being present with me in our lives together. Look forward to seeing you Sunday morning at 10:15 as we begin our sermon series on the book of Acts that's going to last 6 weeks. And those are some powerful words we're going to share together. The ongoing work of Easter. And then join me again here at 10 o'clock on Monday morning. Know of God's love, my friends that surround you. Know of my love for you. I look forward to seeing you Sunday morning at 10:15 and Monday at 10 a.m. Have a great day and a great weekend.